It's the culture, stupid. That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt. And I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. Conservatives have forgotten to fight for the culture because as the culture goes, so goes politics, right? And so if America has taken a socialist Marxist turn in the culture, then it's only natural, it's only by logical extension that the political world follows suit. And I have a great guest today who not only understands that concept, but has taken it on himself to direct this new film called My Son Hunter. Yes, we are talking about Hunter Biden. And before I get into all that, I want to quickly mention that if you like Bold and Blunt, check out Bold and Blunt at the online platform for faith-based podcasts. It's called edify.app. You can find Bold and Blunt among the lineup of all the great faith-based podcasts offered there. Check it out, download it, subscribe to it. You can also subscribe to Bold and Blunt, of course, at WashingtonTimes.com. Just go there, find my hyperlinked name, Cheryl Chumley. Click on it, and at the bottom of my commentaries is a quick and easy way to subscribe to my 3 times a week newsletter. It comes out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And included in that newsletter, along with all the commentaries I write all day long at the Washington Times, are my twice weekly Bold and Blunt podcasts. They come out Tuesdays and Thursdays. And of course, you can get Bold and Blunt wherever podcasts are offered. Hunter Biden and the laptop. Hunter Biden and the laptop story that mysteriously disappeared in the days before the 2020 election.
The Hunter Biden controversy back in the headlines tonight. Back in 2020, the New York Post broke the story during the election cycle. Ever since then, it's been labeled as disinformation, even though the article included recovered emails suggesting Hunter Biden used his relationship with his father to profit on deals with foreign companies.
This is just to catch you up. KATU, Channel 2, ABC. This is just a little background. And this story just came out because, as this news broadcaster says, Hunter Biden, curiously enough, is back in the news. Back to the ABC report.
The story was censored on social media and largely ignored by most major media outlets, claiming the scandal surrounding Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation. But we're now learning social media platforms were actually asked to suppress the story.
Isn't this interesting? Isn't this interesting that for years now, Republicans, especially in Congress, have been calling out the big tech, big social media executives for bias against conservatives, actively working with Democrats and leftists to boot conservative viewpoints and stifle conservative thoughts and ideas from their social media platforms. And every time we have a hearing on Capitol Hill with one of these social media leftists, we hear the same old excuse. What? We're not doing that. Don't be silly. Nothing to see here, folks. Go home. And now here we have the FBI reaching out to Mark Zuckerberg. Listen in. Tell me what you think. Is this censorship?
Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg opening up to podcaster Joe Rogan about how and why the company suppressed a negative story about Joe Biden's son Hunter in the crucial lead up to the 2020 election.
The FBI, I think, basically came to us.
That's
and
Zuckerberg.
Some folks on our team. It was like, hey, just so you know, like, you should be on high alert. We thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump of that's similar to that. So just be vigilant.
So like the FBI came to us, just be vigilant. Zuckerberg said he couldn't actually recall if the FBI mentioned the Hunter Biden laptop story specifically, but he did say, hey, that fit the pattern. In other words, that is something that we would have booted. That is an astonishing admission. Because why is the FBI going to social media to tell social media to watch out for political misinformation? Is that the FBI's job? I didn't think it was, but apparently under the Democrats in the White House, this is what our federal law enforcement has been busily doing. Forget about terrorism or forget about border control. We got to get the conservatives on social media. We got to stifle the ideology that Donald Trump represents. Here's a headline recently from Fox News. Zuckerberg recently admitted Facebook censored reports on the Hunter Biden laptop after the FBI warned them about Russia propaganda. Well, that's pretty clear, right? And now Senators Chuck Grassley, a Republican, of course, and Ron Johnson, another Republican, of course, are calling on Zuckerberg to turn over all these communications that Facebook employees have had with government agencies, not just the FBI, but government agencies regarding Hunter Biden. I think that information could turn up some interesting connections. Perhaps the golden ticket of showing that Democrat politicians have worked hand in hand with social media executives, with social media employees to purposely censor conservative thought and purposely censor journalism stories that paint Democrats in negative lights. That would be a clear violation of the First Amendment. But you know what? Truth has a funny way of coming out. And if you can't get it out through one door, then you open a window and you get it out that way. And that's exactly what My Son Hunter, a new film directed by my guest today, Robert Davi, is purporting to show. Some truths about the Hunter Biden story that perhaps the Biden family, the Democrat Party, definitely we now know the FBI, doesn't want shown. And it's coming at America through a realm of culture, which is much more powerful than just doing it through the political world. I'm glad that Senators Johnson and Grassley are demanding information about Zuckerberg with the FBI. But that's not as powerful as sitting down and watching a film and being drawn in emotionally into the characters and then having some uncomfortable truths emerge about how the left just stifles anything that paints Democrats / socialists / Marxists in a negative light. So my guest today, Robert Davi, is here. And I want to thank you so much, Robert, for taking the time to be on Bold and Blunt. I really appreciate your time.
It's great to be on. Thank you so much, Cheryl.
You have a new film. You directed My Son Hunter, and you direct this from an interesting perspective. I wonder if you can talk about that as well as how much of this film is true.
Well, let me put this, in the beginning of the film we say, this is not a true story except for all the facts. And so we started off with that humor. And it was researched during the script writing process. It was Peter Schweitzer's book, the other information that was out there on the laptop. And when everyone was denying the laptop existed and hiding it, also, I then read Beautiful Things, the Hunter Biden book, which he admits to many things and discusses them. So my approach was to take the screenplay and then flesh it into a story that would be dramatic, would be funny, would be emotional, shocking, and humanizing in a certain way the relationship between father and son and the drug abuse, at the same time exposing the potential for corruption that went on with Hunter dealing with the Chinese, with the Ukrainians, and the Russians, and the whatnot. That you have the son of a vice president and president who is making interesting deals with other people in foreign countries.
Do you think Hunter should be more, and I don't know how you present this in the film, but personally speaking, based on your research and your knowledge of news events and so forth, is Hunter more a sympathetic person or is he a villain?
demonize the drug abuse again. I explore the relationship, which was important to me, between the father and the son. I know how complex those things can be. And there is a... look, this is bold and blunt, right?
Yes.
I played many... I never looked at the characters that I played over the years, whether it be a Bond villain or a mafia Don or whatever it might be, even an FBI character that I did in profile. I never commented on the morality of my characters. I took the same approach to the filming, and to the great actor who played Joe Biden is John James, who was from Dynasty, and Lawrence Fox, who plays Hunter Biden. I had conversations with them in terms of, I don't want a parody, I don't want a Saturday Night Live skit, I want flesh and blood on the screen, and the potential of what that relationship could be with all its complexities. Dealing with knowing that Hunter has gone through a difficult time with the tragedy with his mother early on. So at the same time, it's much more nuanced than just what one would think. But that's what you need to do for me to capture an audience or to see a film.
Actually, that makes the film more intriguing, right? Because instead of just being black or white, which humans aren't, humans are complicated. So I'm glad to hear that you take a more nuanced approach with that.
I had to take a much more nuanced approach because it's also a Shakespearean tragedy.
Yes.
What happened? I don't want to say how I portray the relationship because I want people to watch the film, but they'll clearly see that there is a pain in Hunter, and they kind of they have to. I want the audience to make its own moral judgments.
That's great. That's awesome. Like I said, that makes it more intriguing. At the same time, you are an open conservative in a field known for more Democrat, liberal-leaning types. And so this seems very brave of you to make a film like this. We're not going to see headlines after this film comes out that Robert Davi committed suicide, found dead in a hotel, strange circumstances, are we?
You know, my family hopes not. My wife's dead. I spoke to Rudy Giuliani the other day because are you safe? And that was the first time someone brought it up, and you brought it up now. I'm a filmmaker. I'm an actor. I'm an artist. And I want to be able to portray the times we live in, whether it be political or social. And it's a frustration, yes. There is a frustration in terms of the burying of this story, but yeah, can I say there could be a little trepidation, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's just the left is so vicious. And look, we just saw in the headlines Mark Zuckerberg with his interview with Joe Rogan. Did you catch that? About his...
Yes, I did.
Yeah, what do you think? That astonishing admission that the FBI contacted him and sort of suggested removing Hunter-type stories might be the best way to go. What was your reaction?
Well, I just spoke to Rudy Giuliani the other day, and we forget that he had the laptops. And when the FBI searched Rudy Giuliani's house and took things away from his house, he said to them, "What about these two things?" They go, "What are these two laptops?" They go, "What are they?" He goes, "Those are Hunter Biden's laptops. Don't you want those?" And they said, "No, no, we don't want those." How curious is that, Cheryl? How curious is that the American people have to know this? And we've seen over the last, and it's what angered me, and it's what angered the American people, at least more than half the country. You still have the diehard left that for some reason it doesn't penetrate at all the idea of career politicians on both sides of the house having corruption.
Yep.
You know, it doesn't penetrate on both sides, and it's been going on for decades, and it's been frustrating me for decades. And then the last several years to see the insurrection that was done against Donald Trump's presidency.
Yep.
Prior to January 6th, irrespective of January 6th, what happened there, the insurrection, the Schiff and Schumer and American people sit there. They're not stupid. The American people are not stupid. Sitting there watching this go down. So this film was crowdsourced because of the American people want to see stories that are bringing some kind of light to the truth to the people, and they can make their own decision.
Your film, it's kind of like a voice in the wilderness right now, and as you pointed out, this type of leftist infiltration of America has been going on for decades, but doesn't it seem to you that it's just under the recent years, maybe under Barack Obama and definitely under Donald Trump, that the left has gotten really lunatic fringe, almost to the point of more Marxism than liberalism?
Well, if you want to ask me, it is Marxism.
I am asking you, and I agree.
It is Marxism, Cheryl, and and this started in the 1920s, and I've talked about this before. And most people don't understand the infiltration that the Communist Party, nor do they understand the nuance of what Lenin and Marx understood in terms of using culture to infect society.
Yes.
With their ideology. So much so that there was a man named Erwin Piscator who wrote a book called Towards the Political Theater, who was an agitprop. He created the term propaganda agitation for the left. Well, he came to America in the 1930s and taught at the New School of Social Research and educated a ton of filmmakers. The ton of filmmakers that were, at that time, that Stalin was the hero. At that time, the Soviet Union had such a revolution in culture and art and acting and film with ISIS. I mean, it's very nuanced, but it became an absolute where they said we have to get useful idiots into America, and they put more money into American useful idiots and capturing the culture, education, the media, and the universities, and it went through till we're seeing what's happening today. And I've seen over the decades, Cheryl, I've got 8 kids, and I've seen over the decades, besides my own education, the dumbing down of the American student, the lack of history. Now, there are things, of course, that we're better at. There are things that we're understanding more deeply and other issues that I'm not going to argue. But to negate American history and to paint it as just a negative issue because this is the Marxist infiltration.
Hollywood.
I urge everyone to watch another movie besides My Son Hunter, where you can get it at mysonhunter.com. You can pre-order it now, and you can also, September 7th, it'll be on there. Dr. Zhivago. People should take a look at Dr. Zhivago and what happened to the Soviet Union back then. What happened to Russia back then when they took away their property. They took away their guns. They didn't let people have it's shocking. It's like this romantic love story, but what's under the underbelly, the brilliance of Pasternak's book and the film by David Lean, is to see what happens to a society and how they can be manipulated. But I go on I digress, forgive me.
Oh, no, not at all. And it's interesting that you brought up the culture, because I think personally that conservatives have failed to recognize the importance of culture and how it feeds into the politics for years now. And Hollywood itself is sort of a great example of the degradation of American society, because Hollywood used to be very pro-America, pro-military. And then, as I understand it, actors and actresses had to even sign moral clauses before they did a film. And now it just seems that Hollywood glorifies all that is corrupt about humanity and anti-American.
Yeah, look, back in and again, I go back to, Ronald Reagan, I don't know if you know this, in 1946 at Ida Lupino's house. Ida Lupino was, let's say, the Meryl Streep of her day. And she was having a meeting of the socialist, Marxist, communists, and to give a lecture to Hollywood and to get the Hollywood elite behind the movement. William Holden, the actor, was best friends of Ronald Reagan. He was his best man at his wedding. Told Ronald Reagan that there was this meeting. Reagan went to the meeting. He wanted to speak. And they were shouting him down, and one actor, a guy named John Garfield, got up and said, we should hear him. We should hear what he has to say. He has a right to speak. This is America. We should hear what he has to say. Reagan went up to speak for about 45 minutes to an hour, and then they took Garfield out to the back, a guy named Howard DeSilva, who was a producer, and berated the hell out of Garfield for giving Reagan the platform. Years later, the actor Sterling Hayden, who was the captain in the film The Godfather, that hit Al Pacino, he called Ronald Reagan a one-man wrecking crew of the Communist Party in Hollywood.
Wow.
This was them. And, and we go not just to culture, but to education. People forget about, and it's amazing to me that we don't continue to bring up or remember Bill Ayers and the Weather Underground. Bill Ayers and the Weather Underground in the 60s and 70s, on their website, their constitution was to get a white fighting force and combine them with the black liberation movement to bring down American colonialism, imperialism, and institute world communism. So Bill Ayers and Bernadette Dorn and like Gascon and Chase Bodine, who's the DA of San Francisco, who Bill Ayers Rose, who was the father of, basically. And, right?
Yep.
So it's all in an effort to ignore the entangled web, to ignore this entangled web of what's been going on in America. And Bill Ayers, they went into education. They went into the education, to the textbooks. They realized that. And that's been inundated. It's and I'm not saying we don't tell history. I want to know what happened. I want to know what happened with Lake Lanier. I also want to know what happened with William Harvey Carney. Nobody talks about William Harvey Carney, who was a black man who was a slave, who fought for the Union. And when the color guard that was holding the American flag was shot down, before it touched the ground, William Harvey Carney picked it up and marched and got critically wounded until he got to safety, and he finally gives the flag off, and he says, "The old flag never touched the ground, boy."
Wow.
Boys. And he was then later made a postmaster, and he got the Medal of Honor presumptuous in 1902. But nobody tells that story. I want us to tell the stories, but not to denigrate our country.
Right.
Bring us together as a people.
Right. Bring us together under, one nation, under God, and indivisible. But that's what the left hates, right? Because their strategy is divide and conquer. And
The pluribus unum is to divide and conquer with the left.
And the good thing, though, is that what you were just detailing about Hollywood and the positives versus negatives, that if you go back in decades, you can see the entrance of communism and so forth, that has kind of come to the surface of awareness of the American public. And so now we're fighting back more effectively. And I'm glad to see people like you hitting hard at the culture with My Son Hunter. That's going to bring some much needed truth and platforms for discussion about Hunter Biden. If you had to pick one takeaway from your movie that you want American citizens to take, what would it be?
Well, to get involved, to not be afraid. Because fear or complacency, we will lose our nation. And we've got to get people involved in the arts. Andrew Breitbart, and Breitbart is presenting this movie that the Underreported Story Society fund and get it together, producing it. The necessary, the need not to lay down, to get involved. Look what they did with the people wanting to go to their school boards.
Yes.
Label them as terrorists. We have to capture culture again. We have to, and in a smart way. We can't just be proselytizing, nor can we be, not humanizing certain elements. Life is life. But we've got to be able to tell a message in a certain way and communicate that message and support this film, support filmmakers that are making content that is for everyone, because I want the left to see this as much as I want our conservative base to see the film. It has to be, we have to find a common ground in our culture. And I would say that would be the giveaway, the courage to create content in a smart way that unites us at the same time as educating us. The last message Ronald Reagan gave to the American people when he stepped down in 1988 was a speech, the last part of his farewell speech. He says, we need an informed patriotism. And we need this discussion, and we need content that we can discuss around the kitchen tables. And we have one side. You know, you said earlier, and forgive me for going on, because it's a complex issue. You can't just, soundbite the hell out of it. But you said earlier about the, wait, what did you, I forget what you had said. No, I just lost as I go with these.
Yeah, I know the passion pulls, right? It's hard to.
Oh my God.
That's great, though. I love your patriotism. It's awesome.
It was about Hollywood and the effect of culture, of celebrity.
Yes.
See, the left has it. Here's the thing. When I was growing up, and let's say I had Frank Sinatra, all right? I was an Italian-American kid, and Sinatra was a big signpost for us. So if Sinatra was talking something politically, or Marlon Brando, people in the arts, you tend to get affected by them, whether it's be music or film or any art form. The youth is affected by the culture,
yes,
by these people that are in music and everything else. And for so many times, the right or the conservative doesn't understand the nuance of capturing the youth. Can I give you a for instance?
Yes, please do.
Now, there was a play called Inherit the Wind about the Scope trials. Spencer Tracy played it with Frederick March years ago. And they made the Frederick March character, who was a creationist, seem like he was so stupid and out of touch with science, okay? And that was... we have to say, whether you believe there is an environmental man-made thing, let's take that off the table. Let's say the environment changes, whether it's doing it for decades and millions of years or not. Let's just say something is. Because if so many kids, don't forget, we have Earth Day, we have this, everyone is environmentally aware.
Right.
And we should be. Now, how do we handle this? The left has said to us that this is the most existential problem, bigger than World War II. It's bigger than World War II. I don't know if it will be or not. I've been I've done concerts for Prince Albert in Monaco. I did Hollywood for Science concerts. I've been since I've always been. I want clean water, clean air. I have solar. I am understanding this issue, but I understand it takes a certain amount of time. But the kids today, they go out in the streets and they protest, or they lay in the streets, even in Italy, all over the world, and that girl Greta in Sweden, and they yell about the environment and scream about it. Well, I have a plan, Cheryl. It's called the Earth Force. And if they want to keep doing $3 trillion infrastructure bills, why don't we create an Earth Force? If this is the biggest existential threat, bigger than World War II, why don't we have an Earth Force? And what is the Earth Force? The Earth Force is taking these 18 to 21-year-olds and creating a draft. You have 4 to 6 years where you learn reforestation, toxic mishaps, flood, relocation, new green technologies. Every 60 applicants for the armed forces in the inner cities, 59 of those children are rejected for whatever reason. We have 20 suicides a day from retired military personnel. Let's create an Earth Force if this is the biggest existential threat, and then we can move forward with this environmental thing. See, I think conservatives, if we came up, and I've tried to get traction, I've written 5 pages on that idea. People can call it crazy, other people say it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea because what it does is it creates a solution on several different layers that the conservatives could say, all right, here, let's get behind this program. We could put $2 trillion to create this and then find these. You know what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, and the key word is solutions, which is also the key reason why the left would never go for it, because with the left, with Democrats, with the Greta Thunbergs and the Davos crowd, it's not so much about environmentalism looking for solutions as it is about controlling and regulating the people. At least that's how I see it.
Yes, and that's why this triangulates that issue.
Right. I see where you're going.
It said, even if you got 1/3 of the Democrats to say, wait a minute, why are we fighting this idea? This is a big idea that the youth could understand, and then they get free education and health care. And they learn new green technologies and what the current thing might be. I mean, this kind of program, if it's the biggest existential threat, instead of screaming about it and complaining about it and sucking off what's going on, what's happening now, why not this?
And at the very least, you get Democrats on the record about how they vote on it.
Exactly.
It's creative and strategic in so many different ways, and I applaud you for offering that up. That's very creative.
Thank you.
I know I spent way too much time with you. I hope I didn't cut into something else that you had scheduled. But I did want to wrap up by giving you a chance to tell people, where can they see My Son Hunter? How can they download it? How can they watch it?
Yes, all right. Breitbart's presenting it, an Unreported Story Society. It's called MySonHunter.com. You go to MySonHunter.com. You can pre-order it right now or whenever this runs. And it's September 7th. From September 7th on, you can download it, stream it, and please share the film. I think it's we're having a great response, and people that have seen the film are riveted by it. So I appreciate the support.
Robert Davi, you're a fascinating guy. I would love to have you back on Bold and Blunt sometime if you're willing.
Oh, would love to, yes.
In the meanwhile, thank you so much. And I'm definitely going to be one of the viewers of My Son Hunter. So thank you for directing this. Can't wait to see it.
Thank you, Cheryl. And let me know what you feel when you see it.
I will. MySonHunter.com is the website. Check it out. It's already been downloaded. The trailer has already been downloaded something like 1.2 million, 1.5 million times. So you're going to want to check it out. It's going to be in the news for a while. Hopefully through the midterms. If you like Bold and Blunt, don't forget you can get Bold and Blunt at edify.ab, the online platform for faith-based podcasts. You can get Bold and Blunt anywhere podcasts are offered, including at WashingtonTimes.com. And I want to quickly mention that if you want to learn some more truths about government overreach and how government is actively working to seize and steal individual liberties from hardworking Americans, check out my latest book. It's called Lockdown, The Socialist Plan to Take Away Your Freedom. It warns American citizens that if you really think the government is going to let the fear that they hyped from the coronavirus go to waste and allow this country to return completely to pre-pandemic norms, think again. They have plenty of plans to continue the fear, continue the hysteria, and continue the clampdowns and seizures of individual liberties. Thank you for listening. Tune in next time, and in the meanwhile, stay blunt.